So I'll start with my roundtable, which was on deliverability. Interestingly enough, we had some really good questions, and a lot of them were around still some of the problems that are occurring, I think. One of the good ones that I came across, and there was issues that are still being related to when you're moving from one provider or one platform to another, and sort of issues with IP warming. As some of you know, reputation is obviously the way that we decide, or the mailbox providers decide, how your email is either going to be put in the inbox, maybe in the junk folder, or in Gmail's terms, of the Gmail tabs. But that in doing IP warming, somebody at the table had discussed a problem that they had occurred. And we're not quite 100% sure why their IP warming and moving from one provider to the other actually caused a decrease in their inbox, but the table itself sort of came up with some really interesting ideas and things to start taking a look at in relation to email authentication and other technologies to be able to use during IP warming. So.
No, great. So, and kind of building on some of the, I know GDPR came up in the deliverability roundtable, so I led a roundtable on GDPR. I honestly, from an overall theme, I'm surprised that GDPR has not been discussed more on stage. And I know I've talked to a few folks who've kind of shared the same. And one of the things that came up is there's still this lack of awareness within the email community that GDPR, which is this European law going into effect, right, that says, hey, that if you're sending or if you're messaging a citizen of the European Union, which is basically everybody, can't avoid that there are certain stipulations that we have to adhere to. So there's an awareness, and it's just something to take a look at. Go back and work with your legal teams. I think the two things that came out, there was a concern around, okay, data consolidations. One of the more challenging requirements of GDPR is that you have to honor a request to basically forget about a customer. And so one of the questions is, well, how do we do that? Is it enough to just delete them from like my marketing cloud or my ESP or that sort of thing? Or do I have to forget about them everywhere? So there's just sort of a process, and where the heck do we have customer data questions so that we can honor that. And I think the other big thing was there's still a lot of lack of clarity, right? There's a lot of ambiguity in the law, and so it's sort of a, hey, let's make a best effort and wait for somebody else, hopefully, to be the example to tell us how this is all going to get interpreted.
Right. Yeah, that one's going to be a while, I think. I think we're also sort of waiting for the courts to figure that out over next year. I was able to attend the re-engagement panel or roundtable, and to be honest, I was kind of shocked and not shocked that we're still hearing issues about what do we deal with, inactive, clients? How do we, re-engage with them? And, what does that mean in terms of the types of data that we should be using, in that re-engagement? One of the discussion topics was the use of Gmail. We all know that probably the majority of most of your databases, the top domain in there it is Gmail. And as Len and I have presented on ourselves a couple of times, Gmail has several different metrics that they look at, 3 which are pretty much well known to you guys, whether it's a hard bounce or a spam complaint, but that there's other metrics that Gmail uses in terms of engagement that you will never see as a marketer, but that they use when it comes to, again, determining whether your inbox or bulk or, again, Gmail tabs. Things like, are they touching the message? If they were touching the message, how long? Do they scroll through it? Do they folder it? What sorts of things are happening? And the issue around Gmail being, I think, one of the better providers out there in terms of handling the good mail versus the bad mail, how does that play in the engagement situation? Again, if clients aren't engaging, or if you have a seasonal type of product or a seasonal type of email, does that cause you issues at Gmail over time? And the answer basically is sort of yes right now at this point.
Yeah, and unfortunately we didn't get a lot of spread on that one because I also attended the re-engagement. The thing that stood out to me, and I think the theme that I have picked up on, there's always a theme within the show. One of the things is around re-engagement, and it's this idea of how do I tell the people that are truly dead, right, those email addresses that just are not being used anymore, are not being monitored, they've been abandoned, from the people who are just not interested in my stuff anymore. And the encouraging thing to me is hearing that a number of data providers, third-party data providers, are starting to look at this problem. I know it's something that we've been looking at, so encouraged there, but it seems like maybe re-engagement is finally going to get to a next step of saying, okay, how do we talk to the right people instead of just kind of cleaning out the list
right.
irregardless of.
Yeah, because I think we're still dealing with the problem of quality over quantity, and it's always going to be a problem, right? Let's face it, 2008 was not an interesting. It was an interesting year, but not one for the database side of things, because all of our CFOs said, "Here, we're going to give you less, but we want you to do more." Right. And so moving to a quality over quantity mentality and being willing to let go of people, creating what we were talking about, a sunset policy. I'm just throwing out random dates and numbers, but after 6 months, if they haven't done anything, if they haven't clicked on anything, if you sent them at least 3 re-engagement campaigns, just get rid of them. They're not worth it. But at the same time, one of the questions that also came up is, are there other channels that we could be looking, or other ways to sort of maybe connect with them? And there definitely is. It just really depends on how much cost structure you have to that.
Right.
I wanted to ask, are there things that came up in the roundtables? And by the way, I'm opening this up to everybody because we're in the last session. One of the things that we try to do is lean forward into the next email summit. And I do rely on all of you to help identify some of the themes that may have emerged over the last couple of days that we need, perhaps in the roundtables or just in casual conversation, that I need to bring up on stage. GDPR, definitely one of them. I think another one that we're going to engage in a roundtable at the end of the morning is unified messaging, of messaging across those different emerging channels like SMS, like mobile push. It's actually, as a programmer, hard to get somebody who's doing that to come and talk in detail about it. Is actually one of the issues, especially on the brand side.
Surprise.
Yeah, and it's actually it's a programming challenge. Is that some of these emerging channels are actually hard to put on stage if you're looking for a marketer to talk about it.
Well, it's a programming challenge, and it's also a technology challenge. I think most of you guys who understand some of the changes recently with just the OS X or Apple operating system in Safari 11, all of a sudden now, after 30 days, basically a first-party cookie that you may have an individual is being reset or expired, and any third-party cookie is also being blown away without sort of the permission or even the viewpoint. So when you're talking about cross-channel, then it makes it harder for you to
Right.
track somebody, email versus web versus text, versus mobile apps and whatnot.
Right.
It's being pushed away by Apple.
Are there, so I ask both of you, but also everybody else here, are there themes that emerged in the roundtables, any themes that you would like to see programmed for the April event? Because that's what we're leaning towards, and I rely on this community of email marketers to help identify the things that you want me to put on stage next time. And then we want to either explore in a panel discussion or get one of maybe the key players or the key best examples, best of breed in terms of email marketers who are doing it well to come and share what they're doing.
Ryan?
You got one over here.
Yeah.
Ryan Phelan from Adestra. I would say the panel we had today on machine learning was great. It was incredible in terms of the knowledge of the speakers and the topic. I think if we're going to think about Captiva, we could really bake that out into what is machine learning. I talk to a lot of marketers that throw the term around like it's water, but have no idea what the hell it means. Let's focus on what is machine learning, what is artificial intelligence, what does that actually do to your program, and what are the precursors that you need to have to make all that work, because it just doesn't happen by snapping your fingers. And it was kind of mentioned in the panel today is it takes a large amount of data, it takes a large amount of organization, it takes single view of the customer. There's a lot of things in there. We could spend an entire day on that subject alone, and I think that's what marketers really need to learn is what the hell is it, what do I do with it?
Yeah, and I'm right there, and it sort of ties into the whole single point of truth, which there was also a roundtable on. Obviously, I was involved in that panel, but it's just the idea of what is the data that I need to organize, how do I organize it, and then how is it that I am going to apply machine learning to that data? Because there's so many misnomers about, hey, we're just going to turn this thing on and it's going to bake, it's going to make coffee and bake us bread.
Right.
And it's just not a reality, right? The first thing is I gotta have some data to feed into the learning algorithms or the intelligence algorithms.
Well, and how much as marketers are we willing to let that go on its own, if you will, right, without some sort of review, right? We always hear about some of the mismatching in targeting, and I'm sort of talking about the whole story around Target and the pregnancy issue with the teen and whatnot, but are we quite ready to have a machine sort of help us figure out things? And then what's that creepy factor? That was talked about on the personalization roundtable quite a bit, is either you have a lot of data and don't know what the heck to do with it, or you don't have enough data, so what parts of that data point should you be using? And that's just a manual process, before you get into AI.
Right.
Yeah, if I could suggest something, because Ryan, I agree with you, Morgan, I do too. One of the things that maybe we could think about doing even for April is having maybe one-on-one meetings, because when it comes to leveraging machine learning, it's so different for every organization, it really is. And so it's really interesting when you start to dive down deeper into data sets, into use cases, stuff like that. It's hard to get up sometimes and kind of go across the board, like defining it. I've done that before too on like another presentation. Ryan actually came to that when we did that in Dallas. But doing it one-on-one, a lot of times is that much more powerful, and people tend to be able to walk away with much more actionable items and takeaways to start exploring.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, organizations like EEC, MWOG, and some other coalitions out there, sometimes, we do these pre-cons where it's an hour or two of sort of, let's just get in the room and let's just focus on that one topic versus it being a panel, have somebody present on it. And I don't know if Ken wants to go spend that kind of money on it, but maybe we will.
You guys have any parting thoughts? What you'd like to see next time?
Wow.
You didn't tell us to think about that question.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're old pals, I know I can screw with you.
I'll be in a bathing suit. I don't know if that matters.
Fishing? I don't know.
Fishing? Yeah, that kind of stuff.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're on the right track, right? The thing that is encouraging to me, right? For years it was, is email going to die? Are we going to have jobs, right? This was like a therapy session. Mm-hmm. And now it's so clear that there is a lot of innovation going on in this space. And email is a central part of it. It's got to be respectful and integrating with all these other channels. I think we need to figure out on how to focus on how do we not overwhelm people with the number of opportunities that are out there, right? When you get into data and machine learning and all that stuff. And so just how do we take that? I know keep it simple, stupid was a theme in several of the roundtables. We got to, what are the baby steps and the right way to go about this so that we don't just completely, blow our minds up.
Or panic. I mean, one of the topics within the deliverability table was sort of how do we not panic when something just goes wrong, just even for a brief moment? How do we not all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, I just missed out on a bunch of email, I need to send a ton more, and it goes right back to permissioning, right? I make the joke all the time about my wife, and a lot of you know her, but she'll buy anything that's one to a customer, right? And right now her inbox has probably 700 emails just today alone for Christmas, which now she's got to create a filter that says when husband emails me, make a warning, but how do we stay respectful of the consumers? And part of this issue right now that a lot of us have talked about is the regulations that are coming about. They are coming about not because of the security breaches and whatnot, but they're coming about because technology is moving very fast, and the concern is from the regulators: are we going to give, or put the client, if you will, with the right permissions and make sure that we're, not screwing them over or misusing their information. With the cloud helping, I think the cloud is helping, but the cloud is also a very scary place, and a lot of us are going in this area. So I think right to what Morgan was just saying is taking a look at, how are we respecting those consumers that are giving us this information, and then how are we going to be using that.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thanks very much. As always, I always come to you guys asking for advice
Thank
about
you.
these agendas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.